The blast tore through the convoy with brutal intensity, turning the armored trucks into mangled steel traps and hurling bodies into the smoky air. When the dust cleared, enemy fighters moved through the carnage, cheering their success and tallying 7 American dead. Among them, Staff Sergeant Nina Carter, the intel specialist they'd been aiming for. They snapped photos of her dog tags, boasted about the hit on propaganda feeds, and believed the danger was gone. But what they didn't realize was that Nina was still breathing, suffering from a concussion, shattered ribs, and a fury that would fuel her next 72 hours. As she dragged herself from the wreckage into the night, watching enemies rejoice over her body, she made a decision that would turn into their worst nightmare. She was going to take down every last one who had slaughtered her unit, with skills and tactics they never imagined she had, turning into the hunter they thought they'd erased. The detonation struck at exactly 0847. Staff Sergeant Nina Carter had been going over intel files in the third vehicle of a 7-truck convoy rolling through the Kara region when her world erupted into fire and screams. The lead truck triggered a buried IED, the force of it flipping the armored vehicle through the air like paper. Before anyone could even react, RPGs launched from both canyon sides, locking the convoy into a death trap. Nina's vehicle took a direct hit to the engine. The blast slammed her against the truck's wall, brutally hard. She felt her ribs break. Her skull hit metal. Then everything faded out for seconds, maybe minutes. Time didn't matter. When she came to, the truck lay on its side, flames creeping from the hood, and the rapid stutter of AK fire echoing down the canyon walls. Through thick smoke and fuzzy vision, she saw shadows moving in, enemy fighters sweeping the convoy's remains. Her instincts cut through the fog and pain. She needed to move. Right now. Nina shoved herself through the busted rear hatch, landing hard in sand already drenched in the blood of those who hadn't made it. From nearby, she could hear the fighters yelling in Pashto, celebrating the ambush like it was sport. She dragged herself toward a rock cluster about 30 meters out. Each inch she moved, sending agony through her fractured ribs. Her left arm wouldn't cooperate, maybe a dislocated shoulder, but she crawled anyway, using debris and scorched gear for cover, praying the smoke masked the trail of blood she left behind. Behind her, the fighters were going body to body, executing the wounded and picking the dead clean. She recognized the sickening rhythm of close-range double taps and swallowed the rage surging through her. It wouldn't help her stay alive. One fighter came up on the vehicle she'd just escaped. From the shelter of the rocks, Nina watched as he leaned into the wreckage and pulled out her vest, her dog tags still attached. He raised them high with pride, shouting something back to the others. They believed she was gone. The vest was soaked in blood. Hers, probably, or maybe from the soldier beside her. The fighter snapped a few shots with his phone, capturing the scene for propaganda. Nina didn't flinch behind the rocks, keeping perfectly still. Her breath shallow against the sharp pain, while the fighters just meters away laughed over their win. She took note. 14 of them, by her count. They weren't just some ragtag group. They moved with coordination, carried advanced weapons and gear. This wasn't chance. This was an orchestrated ambush by a trained cell. After 20 minutes of stripping gear and snapping photos, they slipped away into the canyon, where trucks had been parked. 2 vehicles rolled out, leaving behind charred wreckage and 7 fallen Americans. Nina waited another full 30 minutes, scanning for anyone left behind, before she forced her body into motion. She crawled back toward the ruins of the convoy, searching for anything she could still use. She came across an M4 rifle, still functional with 2 full mags, a combat knife, a small med kit, and, crucially, a battered but working radio. And then, under a flipped truck, she found Major Daniels, her CO. He was alive, barely, shrapnel buried in his torso, blood everywhere. "Carter," he croaked when his eyes found her. "Thought they got you. Saw him grab your tags." "Sir, stay still. I'm patching you up." Nina worked fast with the medkit, bandaging what she could, knowing it wasn't enough but refusing to give up. "They're coming back," Daniels murmured, blood on his lips. "I heard it, on the radio bands. They're coming after nightfall. Gotta make sure we're all finished off. Take the gear. How long do we have?" "Maybe 6 hours if we're lucky." Daniels reached up, grip strong despite the pain. "Nina, you need to hear this. This wasn't random. That enemy route data you filed yesterday, it got leaked. That's how they knew exactly where to hit us." A cold wave rushed through her gut. "Who leaked it?" "No idea. But someone wants your intel silenced." Daniels coughed again, harder, more blood. "You're the targeting analyst. You know too much. And they want that gone. They came for you." "Sir, I'm not leaving without you." "No." His voice turned steel. "You carry me, we both die. But you can make them pay. You know where they operate, who they answer to." He pushed a flash drive into her palm. "Everything from HQ, the files you compiled, their entire network. Take it. Find them. Make them wish they had made sure you were dead." "Sir, I can't walk away like this. That's an order, Staff Sergeant. Survive. Get this story out. And make those bastards pay for my Marines," Daniels breathed, his eyes dimming. "Go. Now before they return." Nina wanted to protest, but deep down she knew he was right. She couldn't drag him out with her wounds. Staying meant they'd both die when the fighters came back. "I'll make them pay, sir. I swear it." Daniels gave a faint nod, eyes closing. "Give them hell, Nina." She clutched the flash drive, grabbed her rifle and what gear she could carry, and slipped into the desert before grief could freeze her in place. She had maybe 6 hours before the fighters returned, and she had to be gone and hidden by then. Her concussion made everything sway and spin. Her ribs stabbed with every breath. Her shoulders burned with each movement, but she pressed on, using the sun as a guide, heading for the ridgeline 3 kilometers off, where she could get cover and think. By sunset, she reached it, finding a shallow cave that offered concealment. From there, she could see the wreckage far below, a column of black smoke marking the deaths of 7 Americans. As night fell, headlights glimmered at the convoy site. The fighters had come back, just as Daniels had warned, their trucks moving among the wreckage, likely gathering weapons and checking for survivors. Nina pulled out the battered radio and started working on it, using survival school tricks she'd memorized. An hour of delicate work gave her flickers of power, not enough for a real call, but maybe for a single burst. She built a coded message and waited for the right moment. At 2130 hours, she sent, "Bravo 7, actual Kiaya, convoy destroyed grid NV 425789, survivor 0, except Carter, ambush targeted, intel compromised, enemy compound locations confirmed, commencing direct action, Carter out." The radio went dead for good after the transmission. She had no idea if anyone heard. She examined the flash drive Daniels had pressed into her hand. It held everything she'd built over 6 months. Enemy safehouse coordinates, leadership files, supply routes, and most critically, the compound where the ambush had been born. Nina had spent 4 years as an intelligence analyst, trained to sift patterns, and identify high-value targets. But unlike most analysts, she'd also taken advanced combat training, survival courses, and small unit tactics the average desk-bound intel specialist never touched. Tonight, that was changing. She spent 4 hours shaping her plan. Her supplies were thin: 2 mags for her M4, a knife, and what she'd scavenged. No backup, no support, and injuries that could kill her if she pushed too far. But she had knowledge of exactly where the killers were, and a fury that dulled her pain to background noise she could lock away. Her first stop was clear: a compound 3 kilometers northeast where the ambush had been planned. Her intel said it housed Rashid Barak, the local insurgent commander, and about 15 fighters. They'd be celebrating tonight, uploading propaganda, calling it a victory, plotting their next strike. They thought it was over. They were wrong. Nina slipped into the darkness with night vision goggles she'd salvaged from the convoy, moving slow and quiet, conserving her strength and her rage. The compound came into view just after midnight, a fortified building with thick mud walls, guard towers, and vehicles lined up outside. From about 200 meters away, Nina observed silently, tracking guard movement and noting patrol routines. 6 guards rotated in shifts every 2 hours. Lights flickered inside, voices carried, sounded like a party. Just as Daniels had said, she had 2 options: wait for a cleaner shot or strike now while they were bunched together and less alert. Waiting risked her condition getting worse. Attacking meant going up against the odds. Nina didn't hesitate. She chose to strike. She took position on a ridge looking straight down at the main gate. Through her scope, the guards were clear, sloppy, distracted, chatting instead of covering sectors. Rifles hung loose on their shoulders. At exactly 0245, she pulled the trigger. Her first round dropped the North Tower guard, a headshot at 180 meters, clean and fast. She pivoted instantly to the South Tower, taking down the second guard before the first body hit the floor. The rest froze, confused, giving her precious seconds to line up 2 more and drop them where they stood. The last 2 panicked, running toward the main entrance, shouting alerts. One caught a round mid-sprint. The other made it inside and slammed the gate shut. Now they knew someone was out there, but not who or how many. Nina heard voices rise inside, engines roar to life. Lights came on fast. She didn't wait. One of the oldest sniper rules: never shoot too many rounds from one place. She shifted her position 100 meters east, taking up a new angle on the rear exit. Just as she expected, fighters began filing out from the back, likely to flank what they assumed was her post. Nina opened fire the second they appeared, dropping 3 clean before the rest scattered and ran back inside. They were boxed in now, afraid to step out, unsure where the shots were coming from. This wasn't just combat anymore. It was psychological warfare. Nina waited, vision still blurring from the concussion, but she forced focus, gripping her rifle like it was keeping her grounded. 20 minutes later, a pickup with a mounted machine gun, burst out of the front gate, the gunner unloading in all directions. Nina ignored him and aimed for the driver. One shot punched through the windshield. The truck veered, slammed into the wall. She followed with 3 more quick shots. One struck the fuel tank. The blast lit up the compound, flames climbing skyward. The explosion threw light on the fighters inside as they scrambled, repositioning to defend what was left. She counted at least 8 still alive, maybe more hiding inside the main structure. But she didn't need to storm the compound. She'd already done what she came for, thrown them into panic, shredded their sense of safety. As the first signs of daylight crept over the horizon, Nina slipped away before they could mount a search. She'd landed the opening blow, taken out 7 fighters, and shattered the illusion that they were untouchable. Most of all, she'd delivered a message. You're being hunted. Over the next 48 hours, Nina hit 3 more sites from her intel files. At dawn, she struck a weapons cache, using improvised explosives crafted from gear she'd scavenged along the way to destroy stacks of ammo and firearms. She took out 4 guards silently, relying only on her blade and the close-quarters training drilled into her years ago. That afternoon, she hit a meeting location where 5 insurgent leaders had gathered to talk about the recent strikes. She waited, patient, then dropped 3 of them with surgical rifle shots before the rest fled in panic. That night, she ambushed a checkpoint, using hit-and-run tactics to take down 6 fighters and torch 2 vehicles, vanishing afterward like the ghost they thought they'd already buried. Word moved fast across the insurgent network. An American was coming for them. Some swore it was a spec ops team. Others whispered it was the intel analyst they'd posted pictures of, back from the grave for vengeance. But the truth was even worse than the stories. Nina was using every skill she'd ever learned, intercepting signals to monitor their chatter, applying pattern analysis to predict where they'd be, and executing missions with ruthless precision. But it was taking a toll. The concussion brought constant headaches and blurry vision. Her shattered ribs made each breath a sharp, stabbing chore. The dislocated shoulder barely held up. She was running on scraps of sleep, water, and whatever food she could find, patching wounds with basic first aid that barely kept infection away. Still, she hunted. On the 3rd night, something unexpected happened. A Marine patrol stumbled onto the aftermath of one of her strikes. Wrecked trucks, dead fighters, and immediately recognized the signs. This was American-style warfare. They'd been dispatched after catching her brief radio burst. From cover, Nina watched, confirming they were legit U.S. troops before stepping out with caution, rifle lowered, and identifying herself. The patrol's officer, a young Marine named Lieutenant Blake, stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. Staff Sergeant Carter, Intel said you were KIA in that convoy ambush 3 days ago. Enemy chatter had your tags, said you were done. They jumped the gun, Nina said flatly. I need medical help, resupply, and after that, I'm finishing what I started. Blake looked her over, bloody, bruised, clearly hurt, but still standing, still armed, and clearly dangerous. Ma'am, you need a medevac. You're in no shape to continue. I'm not leaving, she said. Not until the ones behind that ambush are dealt with. I've got their location. She held up the flash drive. It's all here. Give me a fire team in 24 hours. We can wipe out their entire network. Blake started to push back, but one look at Nina's face stopped him cold. He'd seen that same look in Marines who'd lost everything. Revenge sharpened by discipline. Let me run this up the chain, Blake said, though I'm guessing command's going to demand you be pulled out immediately. And he was right. A few hours later, the orders landed. Nina was to be airlifted for medical care and a full debrief. Her intel would be used, but she was barred from taking part in further action due to her condition and the questionable legality of her solo campaign. She nodded, listening politely, then made it clear. She was going after Rashid Barak, the man who orchestrated the ambush, with or without green light. Ma'am, I can't sign off on that, Blake said carefully. I'm not looking for approval, Nina replied. I'm letting you know what's happening. Court-martial me if you need to. But 7 Marines died on a mission built from my report. They're dead because someone leaked our route. Barak planned it. I've got his location. I'm going, even if it's solo. Blake glanced at one of his sergeants, then back at her. Hell, you're dragging me into a court-martial too. Fine, we'll back your move, but we do this clean and by the numbers. What followed was a rapid tactical brief, combining Nina's deep intel with the Marines' firepower. Barak was holed up in a fortified compound 10 clicks to the north, a site Nina had already marked for a strike. By 2200, she rolled out with Blake and 8 Marines. The plan was tight. The Marines would breach and sweep the site while Nina provided overwatch and handled target tracking. But as they neared the location, her radio picked up enemy chatter. Barak had caught wind of the strike. He was en route to a fallback hideout in the mountains. They had maybe 30 minutes before he slipped away. We won't reach him there, Blake said grimly. That place is too dug in. We'd get shredded. There's one shot, Nina said, scanning files from her drive. His escape route runs through a tight canyon, single lane, no detours. If we get there first, he's boxed in. It was a huge risk. The team was already drained, barely holding together. But letting him get away wasn't an option. They pushed hard, double time through fatigue and pain. Nina's ribs felt like they were tearing apart with every inhale, but she stayed in step with the Marines. They reached the canyon just in time. Nina climbed up to a ridge with a clear shot at the road below while the team spread out, blocking off every exit. Headlights cut through the dark. Barak's convoy, 3 trucks, about 15 fighters, moving fast and fully loaded. Nina locked onto the lead vehicle through her scope. Night vision confirmed it. The passenger was Rashid Barak, the same face from intel photos, the architect of the ambush that killed her team. Target locked, she radioed. Engaging. Her shot pierced the windshield and took out the driver. The truck veered and crashed hard. The rest of the convoy came to a halt. Fighters bailed out, spraying blind fire into the night. The Marines returned it from all sides, creating a deadly crossfire the enemy couldn't escape. Within 3 minutes, it was over. Fighters down, trucks wrecked. Barak survived the crash, but was badly hurt. The Marines secured him and called for medevac. This high-value prisoner would spill intel they'd been chasing for months. As the choppers circled in for pickup, Nina stood staring at the wrecked convoy, an exact reversal of the one that had started all of this. Lieutenant Blake walked over. Hell of a mission, Staff Sergeant. You just ran a solo op that wiped out 30 fighters and bagged their top man. I've never seen anything like it. Nina looked at him, her eyes heavy with fatigue. They thought I was just a statistic, another intel analyst who couldn't shoot back. She paused, eyes on the burning vehicles. But I lived, and I made damn sure they paid. For Daniels, for every Marine in that convoy, for every soul they thought would be forgotten. Blake nodded. You became the story they'll whisper, the ghost they claimed they'd killed, back to finish the job. They'll never stop talking about you. Nina let a tired smile flicker across her face. Good. Let them. Let them know what happens when you treat war like a game, when you think there won't be consequences. She glanced up at the helicopters overhead. They found out the hard way. I survived. I hunted. I finished it. 3 weeks later, after surgery and endless debriefs, Nina was summoned to command headquarters. She braced for disciplinary action. After all, her solo mission had broken a dozen rules. But instead, she faced a room of high-ranking officers who had reviewed everything. The colonel leading the briefing looked at her with steady eyes. Staff Sergeant Carter, your unsanctioned 3-day op broke at least 15 protocols and would normally land you in a court-martial. Nina stood tall. Understood, sir. But, the colonel went on, your actions wiped out a key enemy command structure, crippled operations across the region, secured a top-tier target, and brought justice for 7 American lives. Intel Command wants to bring you into a new assignment. Special Operations is also interested, and your case is now under review for commendation, not punishment. He paused, then asked, would you do it again? Run ops wounded, solo, and off-grid? Nina thought for a beat before answering. Sir, I hope I never have to. But if the enemy kills my team and cheers before checking twice, if they think we're finished just because they see tags in the dirt, then yes, sir, I'd do it again. Because we don't quit just because they want us to. The colonel cracked a small smile. That's what I thought. Congratulations, Staff Sergeant. You're being transferred to a joint task force. The kind of unit that does exactly what you did. Direct action intel missions. You'll have training, gear, backup, and a green light. Something in her chest finally let go. It wasn't relief exactly, but it meant her fight had meaning beyond vengeance. Thank you, sir. When do I begin? After you heal up. Your body took real damage in those 3 days. Take that seriously. He handed her a folder. But start reading these now. The next targets won't think you're dead. They'll know you're coming, and that makes them more dangerous. 6 months later, Nina was back at full strength and operating with a specialized team that blended intelligence with frontline assault. She had become what the enemy feared during those 72 hours. A hunter armed not just with weapons, but with data. She now trained other analysts to be ready for the fight, to track, analyze, and act when needed. Her new missions cut threats down before they ever reached American forces, and every time she entered the field, she carried the memory of the convoy, the teammates she lost, and the lesson she'd burned into enemy minds. You don't declare victory until you're sure no one's left to fight. 1 year after the ambush, Nina returned to where her team had fallen. A stone memorial had been raised, 7 names etched deep, including Major Daniels. Nina stood before it in full gear, just hours after completing a mission that wiped out the final members of the group behind the ambush. One of her team's young intel analysts approached quietly. Ma'am, the local fighters say this place is haunted. They claim a ghost, an American soldier, still hunts these hills. They won't go near this area anymore. 10 kilometers out, minimum. Nina let a faint smile cross her face as she rested her hand on Daniels's name. Good. Let them believe in ghosts. Let them dread the shadows and wonder if every sound means someone they didn't finish off. She turned to face her unit. In training, they tell you intel work is safe, that you analyze from behind screens while others take the risk. But Major Daniels taught me something else. When your team dies because of bad info or betrayal, you don't just file reports. You get justice. You show the enemy that Americans don't just stay dead because it's convenient for them. She looked back at the stone. 7 warriors fell here, but their story didn't end with that blast. Because for 3 days, one survivor refused to die quietly. One ghost hunted the hunters until justice was done. The young analyst nodded, taking it all in. They thought you were just another casualty. They were wrong, Nina replied softly. And 30 enemy fighters learned that lesson far too late. I survived. I hunted. And I made sure they all paid for underestimating what we're capable of. She saluted the memorial. 7 names. 7 Marines who will never be forgotten. Avenged by the Analyst they dismissed as non-combat. Because sometimes, the one they count as a casualty isn't dead at all. Sometimes, she's crawling away from the wreckage with every detail of your network in her head, waiting for night to fall. Sometimes the ghost isn't just a story whispered around fires. Sometimes she's real, carrying a rifle and your entire system's secrets. And she's coming for everyone who thought she wouldn't get back up. They thought she was just another casualty. Then she showed them the line between a statistic and a survivor who doesn't quit. And a year later, the ghost was still hunting. They thought she was just another casualty, until she taught them the cost of getting it wrong, and never lived quietly enough for them to forget. The memorial stood as a warning. Underestimate American warriors, and you'll answer for it. 7 names carved in stone. 30 enemies dead in return. And 1 intel specialist who proved the most dangerous weapon isn't always a rifle. It's the one who knows everything and has nothing left to lose. Thanks for watching. For more stories like this one, subscribe to Old Bill's Tales,